Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. I hope you've all been feeling good and doing as well as you can given all that's been going on. I know it's been forever since I last uploaded a YouTube video and I'm sorry about that. I had a lot going on in between getting a new job and then getting really sick for a while. But I think most relevant to you all is that while all these things were happening, I just didn't have the motivation to read anymore. I was going through such a rough patch mentally and I just didn't do anything, which sounds so sad, right? But recently, I was thinking about all of my friends in the manga community and the comfort I got from reading manga. So I pushed myself a little to start reading again, which finally brings us to this video. There are two buckets of goodies today. The first is manga I actually received from my friends during our annual Secret Senpais. At the same time, I'm only sharing the highlights, and you'll probably see the volume 2s of a lot of the other manga in a future haul anyway. The second bucket is all of the manga and anime I purchased myself over the last few weeks. We have a lot to talk about, so without further ado, let's get started. Up first, I have a book I'm both excited and nervous to talk about, Red Colored Algae by Seiichi Hayashi. For those unfamiliar with this work, Red Colored Algae is an example of gekiga. Now, a brief intro to gekiga. It started in the 1950s and was essentially a response to the manga circulating at the time, like shonen, which targeted mainly younger readers. Creators of gekiga wanted to create and enjoy more realistic and mature stories. Gekiga artists were also very experimental and abstract with their art, which I think stood out to me the most while reading. Red Colored Algae specifically is a pretty angsty story about a couple, Sachiko and Ichiro, and the hurdles in their lives such as struggling to find meaning in their work, family pressure, a really stormy relationship, all while they're in their 20s, which is a lot of struggles I think young people can relate to. Honestly, this was a pretty difficult read for me, and I could tell that was intentional. The first time through, I think a lot went over my head and it didn't stick to me, but I could tell there was more I needed to dig out. Hayashi juxtaposes a lot of simple drawings with really intricate ones, and the paneling and passage of time isn't always clear, which is all to say a lot of the responsibility is on the reader to piece it together. But I enjoyed this work enough to want to reread it. I've been told this is a good intro to gekiga, and hopefully I'll try out more in the future. Next, I have Volume 1 of House of Five Leaves by Natsume Ono. One of my friends is a huge fan of this series, and since I value his opinion, I wanted to give it a shot. I had a feeling I'd like this though because I'm already a big fan of another one of her works, Akka. House of Five Leaves follows Akitsu Masanosuke, a ronin or masterless samurai. He's been trying to find work as a bodyguard, but because he doesn't look intimidating, he's frequently left unemployed and even told to just find a new career. He catches the eye of a man named Yaichi who needs his services for the night. But it turns out that Masa has to oversee Yaichi while he collects ransom money. This completely throws off our good-natured samurai. And even though he doesn't agree with Yaichi, he still wants to know more about him and his group, Five Leaves, so he finds himself frequently hanging out with the crew to find out more. I really love Natsume Ono's style of storytelling. I love the relatively peaceful atmosphere, the slow pace, and the slight air of mystery. Just like Masa, I found myself wanting to know more about Yaichi, and he's definitely the most captivating part of this story. I also really love her art style. Straightforward and not very flashy, but at the same time she captures their emotions so well. I do plan on picking up more volumes if I can. Next, I have Taiyo Matsumoto's techcon Concrete, which follows two boys, black and white, who live in the once thriving but now declining Treasure Town. They're often seen literally flying around and keeping tabs on the city, stealing, and taking down any threats to the point where they've gained notoriety among the inhabitants of Treasure Town. When a new gang enters their city with the goal of gentrifying it through amusement parks, Black in particular is determined to maintain his ownership of the city and is more than willing to become even more violent. I really enjoy this manga, particularly each of the characters. I love the bond and dichotomy between the wild and unhinged Black and the optimistic and bright White. I also thought the plot and premise were already quite unique on their own. At first I was a bit put off by how large this book is because it's kind of a hassle to carry, but the size absolutely makes a difference. Treasure Town itself is so intense and overwhelming, and I think only a large format like this could capture how over the top this city is. I've heard amazing things about the animation techniques used in the movie adaptation, which I can hopefully watch soon. Last, but certainly not least for my friends, I have Volume 1 of Arya the Masterpiece. I love the slice of life genre. Seriously, after finding out about it, my quality of life has drastically improved. Unsurprisingly, I'm also a huge fan of Iyashike, or healing slice of life, of which Arya is considered the gold standard. And after reading this first volume, I wholeheartedly agree. Set in the future, Arya takes place on the now terraformed planet Mars. Our main character Akari has recently arrived from Earth and wants to become an undine, which is a gondolier/tour guide. In each chapter, we get to see Akari practice, explore her new home, and make new friends. I cannot speak highly enough of this series. It's just so delightful and optimistic. Every character so far has been so sweet and charming, and each chapter is unique and fun. At first I read the whole thing in one go, but lately I've been reading a few chapters here and there when I'm having a tough day, and my mood has been lifted. This is definitely a high priority on my to-buy list, and I would recommend this series to any fan of slice of life or anyone who just needs a few minutes to drift off and relax a little through manga. The rest of this video will be things I purchased myself recently. Up first, I have Volume 1 of Perfect World. At its core, this is a romance manga, and while it typically includes challenges like the chase and the confession, this romance is made a bit more complicated due to a disability. Our main characters Kawana and Ayukawa were high school classmates who fell out of touch, and now as working adults they've reunited. In their years apart, however, the once vibrant Ayukawa suffered a spinal cord injury and now his legs are paralyzed. Kawana at one point had a crush on Ayukawa, and seeing him again resurfaces some of these feelings. But she honestly has no idea what living with a disability is like, and as awful as it sounds, whether or not she could love a disabled person. What I appreciate about this manga is that we get both perspectives. The uninformed Kawana is ushered into a new world that includes learning empathy, new medical terms, and about issues in accessibility. All the while, Ayukawa is there to share what he actually lived through, and it's not a pretty experience. I haven't come across many manga like this, and I think that's what drew me to it. The first chapter alone was already an emotional roller coaster. But more than the romance actually, I'd say I'm interested in Ayukawa's perspective as an architect, and I'm hoping to learn more in future volumes. Next, I have Volume 1 of Metamorphosis, which tells the story of an uncommon friendship between an elderly woman and a high schooler who bond over their shared love for, you guessed it, boys love manga. My heart was so moved by this manga, particularly the relatability of the main characters, and not just over their love for BL. I'm actually working on a first impression of this volume, which will be up next week. I hate to leave you in suspense, but if you'd like to hear my thoughts on this manga, please stay tuned for that video. Next, I have 7 Days. It centers around two high schoolers who are trying to navigate and learn about themselves and learn about love. The story opens with Shino, who is a playful high schooler and someone who doesn't really take falling in love seriously. He's intrigued by the somewhat mysterious Seiryo, who is famous in their school for dating girls for 1 week, and Shino decides to be this week's partner. And while Seiryo comes across as flippant, he really just wants to figure out if he himself can fall in love too. And so this manga follows the two of them over the course of their 1 week together. And in this time, they get to learn about each other's values, with neither of them fully grasping just what they signed up for. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think 7 Days was one of my earliest experiences with boys love manga, and oddly enough, one of my first experiences with elements of slice of life. I remember my friend introducing this to me in high school, and I was immediately drawn to how understated and how soft everything was. Previously, I was reading dramatic manga like Peach Girl or action-packed manga like Naruto, and even within BL, I was more familiar with my same friend's go-to recommendation of Junjo Romantica. It never occurred to me that romance could be subdued, or that there could be so much substance in silence. And I think for that reason, this series stuck to me for so long. Even now, this is the kind of atmosphere I gravitate towards. It's also special to me because I remember scouring the internet for the singles a few years ago, and it was actually my friends in the manga collector server who found both volumes for me at almost retail price, which is well beyond what they go for now. I obviously like the manga enough to buy it again, and if you're new to boys love, I think this could be a great way to ease yourself into the genre. Next, I have Barakamon Volume 18+1, which is the final volume of the series. Our main character Honda is a calligrapher who is sent to live in a small village in the Goto Islands after punching an elderly man who critiqued his style. At first, Honda is beyond reluctant, not only with adjusting to village life, but also with trying to fit in with his new neighbors. While he's very rigid, uptight, and by the books, the villagers are vibrant, easygoing, and cheerful. And in this series, we get to see Honda interact with these new people and these new ways of thinking, all the while letting loose and finally developing his own style. I absolutely love the anime for this series, and I can easily say it's my favorite, or at least tied for first. It's endlessly funny, endearing, and entertaining, and for a long time now it's been my go-to anime for when I'm sad. Surprisingly enough, even though I cling to this series, I actually haven't read that much of the manga. Since I saw this volume came out recently, I figured I'd pick it up and then gradually pick up the rest so I can finally give it a read. What's really nice about this final volume is that it includes a lot of 4-panel comics and a ton of illustrations. If you need a funny series to keep you in high spirits, this is easily my top recommendation. Next, I have Volume 1 of A Man and His Cat. If I'm remembering correctly, I think this manga was serialized in the same magazine as Barakamon, and I remember flipping through that magazine and just being so captivated by this guy's smile. I love cats already, so I knew I'd enjoy this if I read it, but I distinctly remember thinking something along the lines of, wow, a character with a smile this nice, I gotta find out more. As you can guess with my hiatus, it's been a while since then, but I never forgot about this manga, and this was actually one of the first ones I bought last month. As you also might have guessed, this manga is about a man, Kanda, who recently adopted a cat, Fukumaru. Fukumaru is for some reason not considered cute, and because of his age, he's also considered harder to adopt. But our lovely main character isn't swayed by silly things like that, and takes this cute kitty home. Much of this manga is Kanda navigating cat parenthood and doting on Fukumaru, but it's through these cute moments that we learn a lot about how much these two lonely fellows really need each other. It absolutely melts my heart. Next, I have Love on the Other Side, which is a collection of short stories by Nagabe, who I think many of us know as the creator of The Girl from the Other Side. I'm a big fan of that series and a big fan of short story collections, so I knew I had to check this out. All the short stories here generally tackle the theme of love, but each story tackles it in a different way, such as boundless love, love between friends that cheers us up, the way we protect the ones we love, or the way we can even grow to love someone. Each story also features a human character and some sort of animal or beast, which adds to the level of complexity. Overall, I enjoyed each story, some more than others, and they all left me feeling something. Usually a fuzzy feeling, but sometimes a pang in my heart. I think Nagabe captured raw and real feelings perfectly. I also really love their art style, and I think it adds to the fairy tale or folklore feel. I think if you want a quick read to stir your heart, you'll enjoy this. I know they say to never judge a book by its cover, but the endearing cover is the exact reason why I picked up Volume 1 of Beyond the Clouds. Isn't it so beautiful? Our main character Theo was an imaginative kid. As he read epic fantasies, he dreamt of going on his own adventures, but he never could. Now that he's older, he's not living an adventurous life, but he hasn't lost that sense of fun and often goes hunting for treasure in trash heaps. On one of these treasure hunting excursions, he meets a young girl with wings, Mia. Now, I'd like to add that this is a fantasy setting. We have typical-looking humans like Theo and more animal-like humans, but winged humans are surprisingly rare in this world and catch the eyes of everyone, both good and bad. And it's this meeting with Mia that finally gives Theo the adventure he's been longing for. In addition to the stunning cover, I was really drawn to the beautiful art in this manga. Nick, the creator, has such a talent for creating soft and detailed illustrations. I especially love how they use tones to add so much depth and softness. I felt like I was looking at paintings while reading. So far the story itself mirrors the art and has been so wholesome and sweet. Like I hinted at, this is still an adventure series, and I'm excited to see more danger get incorporated in future volumes. Anyone who knows me knows that I cannot go a single day without mentioning norigami, and that extends to my YouTube videos as well. This is volume 21. It's kind of funny, when I was disconnected from manga, I obviously wasn't buying anything, but I guess past me knew to pre-order this volume. It actually arrived back in March, and it was a total surprise. If I'm remembering correctly, this arrived 1 week before New York City began its shelter-in-place, and as you can imagine, life was especially tumultuous and uncertain then. And I remember when I got this volume, all I could think was, wow, how did you know I needed you right now? I also remember spending my first couple weeks of quarantine rereading Norigami for I believe the 6th time of my life. For those unfamiliar with the series, Norigami tells the story of a minor and rather unpopular god Yato who wants to make a name for himself. He wants thousands of followers, his own shrine, and tons of money, but because he's not a major god, he's forced to take on odd jobs to make a living. While on one of these odd jobs, he causes an accident that turns our second main character, Hiyori, into a half-phantom. Hiyori doesn't trust the shady and kind of loser Yato at first, but as she starts spending more time with him, she uncovers more about the world of the gods. Needless to say, I think this is a really fun series. The main characters are so lovable and endearing, and the plot itself consistently moves me and keeps me on the edge of my seat. I've been trying to get as many people as possible to read Norigami for a long time now. And actually, I think by the time this video is uploaded, we will have just wrapped up a norigami book club in the Manga Collector's Discord server. If you like the idea of book clubs and you want to chat about manga with more people, you should definitely consider joining. We have tons of book clubs running all the time. Lastly, I have a new type of addition to my collection, a manhwa or Korean comic. This one is actually still printed in Korean and not licensed by an English publisher yet. The Korean title is Yol Ahop Sumul Hana, which in English is simply 1921. The story follows a young woman named Yuni who has recently recovered from an accident that unfortunately took up 2 whole years of her life. As you may have guessed, the years she lost are between 19 to 21 years old. This makes things extra complicated for her because these years are also considered the cusp of adulthood as determined by society. While she is technically the adult age 21 now, she's still just 19 mentally. She finds a lot of comfort in the carefree nature of cats and often feeds strays outside, where she meets Dongwi, another 19-year-old also on this precipice of adulthood. But instead, he's trying to have as much fun as possible in the remaining time of his youth. I read some of this manhwa many years ago, albeit through scans unfortunately, but I was really moved by the story and wanted to own a copy of it somehow. There's no English publication of it, which was a bust for me. I also didn't know any Korean and was too chicken to navigate a Korean site by myself, and so I lost hope. But somehow this series was always on the back of my mind. A few years ago I found out it was published in German, which I do not speak at all, but I thought this was my closest chance to buying it in print, and I almost did. But at the time, my German friend wasn't able to ship it to me, so I gave up on that. Flash forward to a few months ago when I actually did start learning Korean, and my first thought was, I can finally buy this! And so I did. My Korean reading ability is not that great, so I've been struggling through this, but I'm really happy to finally have it in my hands. Right Stuf also had a sale on a lot of anime, and I typically don't buy anime, but some of my favorite series were on sale. Before we get to those, let's talk about a mystery bargain item I got. There were a ton of bargain item codes that were circulating last month, so I figured I'd use one, and I got Ajin. Ajin's actually also on Netflix, so I just watched it there, and I was pleasantly surprised. In the world of Ajin, alongside average humans, there are special humans who have the ability to basically recover from serious injuries, even accidents that should have killed them. Society has a very negative and heinous attitude towards them, to the point where Ajins are not even considered human by some, and often have a bounty for their capture. The main character, Kei, discovers he's an Ajin after he survives a collision with a truck, and while that should be considered a miracle, he's subsequently pursued by the police and Japanese government. As of now, I've only watched the first 2 episodes. This isn't really the type of series I'd prioritize, but I enjoyed what I saw. I think what interests me the most are actually these black ghosts that Ajin have attached to them. They're just so fascinating, and I'm more curious about them than anything else. I am, however, having some trouble getting used to the animation. The anime was created in 3D, and it's just a bit jarring at times. If I do continue with the series, it'll be through the manga instead. Now onto some favorites, starting with chihayafuru. Where do I begin? I am just so thrilled to finally own this. Our main character Chihaya started off not really having a dream for herself. Rather, she really enjoyed supporting her older sister's dream. She meets a boy named Arya in elementary school and through him discovers the card game Karuta, and she has a lot of fun with it. Her fascination with the game helps her form her own dream, which is to become the best Karuta player in Japan, and effectively the best player in the world. This series is absolutely fantastic. The characters are all incredibly lovable and have great chemistry, the games are always so intense and moving, the story is so heartfelt and touching, the animation is gorgeous. Every single checkbox I have, this anime hits. It does have a bit of a slow start, but if you can get through it, you're in for such a beautiful journey. Chihaya alone is so passionate and funny, but the fact that she's surrounded by so many amazing characters makes it even better. You will not regret starting it. I'm not sure about the availability overseas, but in the US you can watch it on Crunchyroll. We are finally nearing the end. Last but absolutely not least, I have the first 4 Blu-rays for Space Brothers. Truth be told, the main reason I don't buy anime is that I actually don't own a Blu-ray player, but Space Brothers is so worth it. Mutta and his younger brother Hibito were both super curious kids and often enjoyed exploring together. On one of their nightly adventures, they see something flying in the sky, which they think is a UFO, and this inspires them both to want to become astronauts in the future. Flash forward a few decades, and while Hibito has become an astronaut, Life has not panned out so successfully for Mutta. After recently getting fired, he's determined to finally follow through on his promise because, well, better late than never. If it wasn't apparent earlier, I love this series. I think the characters are all realistic, and that makes the series relatable and easier to enjoy. I actually watched it a few years ago, but it was in my most recent rewatch of it that it really hit me personally, and I realized how similar I am to Mutta in some ways. Both he and I have younger siblings. My younger sister and I are actually also working towards the same goal right now. And funny enough, she is definitely ahead of me. For a while now, I felt pretty insecure about it, just like Mutta. But seeing him overcome his insecurities helped me start to overcome mine. Generally speaking, I think this anime serves as a good lesson to everyone that it's never too late to start working towards a dream. There are just so many kernels of wisdom wrapped up in a really fun and humorous story. This series is also on Crunchyroll if you're interested. And that finally brings us to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. I know I have my work cut out for me to rebuild my channel, but I'm excited to make videos again. I hope you're all safe, happy, and healthy. I know with all that's going on in the world, it might be hard to focus on our hobbies when we have a million new priorities. But I hope you have a few moments to yourself to relax and have fun. And with that, I hope we can meet again in my next video. Bye for now!